Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode numero uno of the Changavi Show. I am the host, of course, your forever host, Anuj Changavi. And for those of you that don't know what this thing is and what this show is, let me quickly explain real quick before we hop right in, because this show is all about rapid information very quickly. So 3 main rules to this show. If you haven't listened to the announcement, go listen to the announcement if you want a more in-depth look into the show. I'm going to link it down in the description, so don't worry about that. Okay, 3 main rules. The first rule is that this show will not exceed 40 minutes. Maybe today it will. We'll see how it goes, but I'm going to give myself a pass. But if it does exceed 40 minutes, besides today, if it does exceed 40 minutes and I put it out on the internet, I have to do 20 push-ups on Instagram. So that's my accountability promise to you guys. And trust me, you don't want to watch me do push-ups, or maybe you do. Maybe you want to watch me struggle. That might be the case. So that's the first rule. The second rule of this show is that we have 7 segments. Sorry, I can't do math. And they go as follows: personal update, sports topic. We're going to do a sports topic, a music topic, 2 pop culture topics, a news and politics topic, and a miscellaneous topic every week. If you want a more in-depth explanation to all of those topics, click on the announcement video down below. Yes. So and the third thing I wanted to say real quick before we hop into the show is essentially what this show is we are streamlining the process of late night without all the commercials, without all the bullshit. And I'm here to hopefully give you some entertaining content. At least I hope. That's my goal. Anyway, we're trying something new. This is a format I wanted to experiment for a while, and I'm using StreamYard for the first time. So I hope you guys enjoy this show. So with the first topic of the day, my vibes. How are my vibes? Anuj's vibes. Honestly, it's been pretty good since the last time I posted a video. I know I posted a little thing about how I was kind of burning out and really feeling it towards the end of this recent quarter here in college, and I really was, to be honest. I have been feeling a lot of burnout, a lot of anxiety when it comes to that type of thing. It's not been easy. I feel like, and I was actually looking at the calendar, I pretty much have been going to school for a year straight, which is, in my estimation, pretty freaking exhausting. You kind of start to run out of gas by the time you hit May. I know it's a very first world problem, but it was hitting hard, and the burnout got bad towards the end of that quarter. But I'm lucky that I was able to get out of it, do okay. And now we're in summer quarter. The classes are a little easier, at least I'm starting to think. And my schedule should free up a little bit, so I'll have more time to record some shows for y'all, which is exciting. And so more content on the way, which I'm always excited about. In terms of other stuff, I feel like school, or just everything in general the last few months, I feel like I haven't moved forward enough. That's something I've really been thinking about how to move forward, not only with the podcast, but with school, with life, personally, professionally, everything. And honestly, I heard something the other day that I think resonated with me a lot. And that was, you kind of just got to go 1% every day in anything. And 1% growth per day is considered a win. And in my opinion, I always am the type of guy who looks very big picture and wants big picture jumps every day. But I'm starting to try to change my mentality to be like, all right, listen, that's not going to happen all the time. You're not going to get 100% better every single day of the week. And there's going to be times where things are not going to go your way, and you're going to have to, you're not going to be able to get a big picture done. Yeah, a big picture goal done in one day. It takes incremental steps. And I'm trying to hopefully get better with that mentality. It's something that I've been working on, and accepting the fact that maybe if I grow 1% every day, 1%, things will be better and hopefully lead to a greater good and bigger change. on that front. And the last thing I wanted to talk about before we wrap up this segment of the show is that honestly, like, I know a lot of you who are avid listeners of the show and of the podcast are big time, like, tech people and very on that summer internship grind. That's kind of the mode that most people are in, particularly college students at this time of year. And I wanted to just say something to the people that don't have internships. Guys, it's okay. There are a lot of people that didn't get internships their first go around. It's cool. You have time, you have a year, and even if you don't get an internship, I'm sure you'll figure something out. But even if you don't have an internship this summer and you're a little free, why don't you just start something? I started this podcast kind of out of like, I don't really got much going on the quote unquote extracurricular front. Let me try something. I've always been one to try passion projects. I guess it's kind of a part of my personality, to be honest, is to try different things when it comes to things that I love and things that I enjoy. And I guess this was one of those things. And the podcast was one of those things, and so much good has come out of it. It's what hopefully I can see myself doing for the rest of my life, and continue to hopefully get better at in terms of content creating, because this is just the beginning. And so for those of you that don't have internships, go out and make something. Go make some stuff happen. Make your own. Technical difficulties. I apologize. But collaborate with your friends who don't necessarily or aren't necessarily, working on internships and stuff like that, and make something work, because, you never know what's going to happen. So that's all I have to say about that. Real quick plug before the next segment. Follow me on Instagram at Essential Question Podcast. For those of you that are new, I link my socials down below, so you can just go ahead and click those and hit the follow. Anyway, on to our sports topic for the day. This was news that actually broke, the sports world, and I think it transcends beyond sports, to be honest. And that's the news of Carl Nassib. Carl Nassib is a very, and this whole headline was very interesting to me. I think it was about, maybe Monday or Tuesday of last week. Carl Nassib came out as gay to the public. I don't know if his friends and family were aware. I'm pretty sure that they were, based on the message and stuff like that. And not only did he come out as gay, he donated $100,000 to the Trevor Project, which is a LGBTQ plus charity group that donates to local communities and organizations that to specifically help with teens, I believe, who are struggling with their identity. I think that's what it is. If it's wrong, please feel free to correct me. But Carl Nassib made a huge step, and he came out as gay in a very macho sport. Football, the culture of football is not necessarily conducive to that of coming out. And I'd argue the culture of athletics isn't necessarily one that is conducive to coming out. So this is a huge move and a huge step. And I think there were so many layers to this. First of all, I just appreciated the way Carl came out. I thought the way that he did it was super casual, super fun. Or not fun, but I mean, maybe it was fun for him. I don't know. But it was just super casual. I personally haven't had to come out. I'm straight. So that's just not an experience that I've had to have in my life. But I have had friends who've come out to me, and it's just overall been a very positive experience, so to speak. And it's been very casual. It hasn't necessarily been like a, big deal. Like, that's often dramatized in the movies, like you look at movies like Love, Simon and other films like that are not coming to the top of my head. But the coming out process is super dramatized. It's like fireworks blowing up in the background, singing and dancing in the street. Like, the experiences that I've had with these types of situations, it's often been very casual, often been very low key. And I love that Carl was able to do that. I love that Carl just was like, hey guys, I'm Carl Nassib. I'm in Westchester, Pennsylvania right now, and I'm gay. And that's literally what he said in the video. I mean, obviously not those exact words, but that was the context, and that was basically what he said. I mean, and the second part that I look at is the future. Is like so Carl Nassib came out, huge deal, overwhelming amounts of support from all athletes of every sport and most fans as well. So where's this going to go? And I thought that JJ Watt said it best. He congratulated Carl in a tweet and then proceeded to say, I hope that in the future, this is not breaking news. And I thought that was something that was really well said. It was well articulated, you know? I think that we live in a society today where if a major high profile celebrity were to come out as gay or an athlete, comes out as gay, like it's a huge deal. And sorry for the technical difficulties again. But the reality of the situation is that we don't live in a society where where coming out as gay isn't a big deal. And hopefully we can get to a point sometime in the far distant future, or maybe this near distant future, I don't know, where we can say, like, when someone comes out, it's just like, okay, cool. Or maybe they don't even need to come out. Is that a possibility? Can we get to that point as a society? These are just interesting things that I was thinking about. And the Trevor Project, lastly, I'm glad that they got some recognition. I've heard of them before a couple of times. They are fantastic. They do a lot of great work locally within communities. And that, I'm glad that Carl brought their charity and nonprofit to life, because I believe that's very important. But message to Carl, I know you're never going to see this, bud, but I hope you have a great, not great career. Of course, I hope you have a great career, but I hope you have a great season and continue to do what you do, because I'm sure a lot of people out there, including myself, support you. And I hope that you continue to do what you do. Okay, and before we get into the next segment, subscribe to the YouTube channel, please. Subscribe, like the video, all down below. We need the clout if we want to survive. No, I'm kidding. But hey, more followers, the better, right? So let's see what we can do on that front. This next topic, unlike Carl Nassib, where I just preached positivity for 5 minutes, hopefully it was 5 minutes, if not longer, with the mic mute and everything. This next topic is our music topic. And I was thinking to myself, I was like, what should I talk about for music? J. Cole just dropped an album. I could fangirl for him. Oh, I could simp and fangirl for him for hours. But I didn't want to do that because I feel like everyone expected me to do that. I mean, after all, I have this poster of him right here. So, like, what would be the purpose in doing that? So I thought, okay, maybe I'm going to switch out of my comfort zone. I originally thought about doing some country music segment, but I was like, nah. So here's what I decided on. Maroon 5. They just dropped an album titled JORDI a couple of weeks ago. And I decided to check it out as someone who is an avid Maroon 5 fan, and as someone who really hasn't, listened to, as an avid old Maroon 5 fan, I should specify, and hasn't really listened to their music since about 2014, 2015 in terms of their new stuff. And I have to say, guys, this album was an incredibly disappointing piece of work. I mean, Adam Levine, I have a complicated relationship with, because I appreciate the fact that he continues to want to put out music and it seems authentic and real. But it's gotten to the point where I feel like the genre has died, right? Like, I feel like the pop music, that kind of like rock pop blend, it was a moment in time in the 2000s and early 2010s that we can look back on and think, wow, those were nice throwbacks, Payphone, One More Night, This Loves, like the whole Songs About Jane album. All of these songs, all these records, these albums were a moment in time. But I feel like that moment has passed, and it's been passed for about 7 years now. We live in a world where hip hop is dominating the culture. It's the most popular streamed genre in the world. You even see a lot of pop singers like an Ariana Grande transitioning to more of that rap feel, more of that hip hop, that R&B type vibe. You even see pop starting to form into R&B. So like less Fall Out Boy, more Bryson Tiller is kind of what we're looking at when it comes to the music industry. And Adam Levine tried to create a record that, yes, had a little bit of R&B elements with some of the songs, but it was done very poorly. And it seemed like Adam Levine was trying to catch up to the times, but he epically failed to do so. And so I'd say at best, this album is a beautiful mistake. And there's another point I wanted to bring up. When it comes to the music, when it comes to the songs of Maroon 5 on this album, there were a few that I actually liked. There was actually two, really. Beautiful Mistakes, which was the single, which actually got me kind of excited to listen to the album because I was like, okay, I mean, I like Meg Thee Stallion. The song was all right, too. So I was excited. But Can't Leave You Alone is one song on the album that I really enjoyed, but it wasn't for Adam Levine. It was more so for Juice WRLD and his rap his feature on that song. Adam Levine was okay. It was, whatever. And then there was a song, Convince Me Otherwise, which is by a Bay Area artist herself. Get it? Haha. And she did amazing, but Adam Levine, again, was maybe a C+ at best. And I've come to the conclusion that with the release of this album, with listening to the album a couple of times, because I'm not a one-listen album guy, Adam Levine and Maroon 5, you guys did a lot of good for the music industry. You've made millions of dollars. You've released one of the best pop albums of all time, arguably, and songs about Jane. You have released records between the years of 2008 and 2014 that forever shaped the way that high school dances are DJ'd. You did that. But now you have gotten to the point where your music is not needed. It's a time that has passed. You have faded away from that. So, Mr. Levine and Maroon 5, I beg you, you all have beautiful houses in Bel Air. Adam Levine, you have a beautiful Sports Illustrated model wife to go home to and a beautiful Bel Air house. So go home. Sit at home, relax, enjoy some time with your families, and just retire, please. For the sake of music, for the sake of all of us, retiring would be the best possible option. And maybe come back. Maybe come back a little later, but maybe you need some time to just reevaluate. Do a logic retirement. Retire for a little bit, reevaluate, and then re-enter the industry with a vigor, with a new mentality, because the songs that you're making right now simply are not working. So that's all I'm going to say about Adam Levine before I get too negative and he tries to cancel me, acting like I have that much clout. On to our next topic. We're talking pop culture here. And again, we're going to go back to some positivity because Alex Cooper got the bag, ladies and gentlemen. And this is going to be a podcast topic. And there's a couple things I want to bring up here. First of all, for those of you that don't know, Alex Cooper is the host of Call Her Daddy, the podcast, which is probably one of the top 5 most popular podcasts in the United States right now, and probably one of the top 15 podcasts throughout the world right now. And Spotify basically signed a licensing deal with Alex Cooper for 3 years, $60 million, the equivalent of a standard NBA contract, second NBA contract. And also, Alex continues to have a merchandise deal with Barstool, which was her old company where she was releasing her podcast out of. And so she is she's basically giving Barstool a portion of the profits from the merchandise that she's selling off their website. So basically, she's making double the money from both companies. Works out for Alex. She got a bag. I think that's the first takeaway we got to come through here. 3 years, $60 million is no fucking joke. That's an NBA contract for a podcaster. So, Hey, Spotify, if you're listening to this, I get like 2 viewers an episode, but like I could take like a 2-year, $10 million contract. You know what I'm saying? I'll take the vet minimum. But yeah, Alex got the bag. And here's what I want to say about this. It's weird to me that the two faces of Spotify podcasting are Alex Cooper and Joe Rogan. And I was thinking about that, and I was like, they're two polar opposite individuals. They're two people who do things very differently. Joe Rogan tends to be more of on the conservative side of things. People call the Rogan Bros. He has his opinions that are very controversial, and he said things on his podcast which are a little, so to say the least. I don't think liberal millennials are necessarily the most happy with Joe at the moment, but Alex is like the opposite. She just kind of says what's on her mind type thing. But she talks only and primarily about sex, love, and relationships. Those are the three things that she talks about the most. And what I've noticed with Alex Cooper is, I mean, the reason she got this money is, first of all, she completely deserves it. She's a super entertaining host. She's someone who just can grab your attention for 90 minutes on a podcast episode, and you wouldn't want to stop listening because she's just so fucking entertaining. And the second thing is that I think Alex Cooper is kind of creating this counterculture. And what I mean by that is that we live in a society today where it's very taboo to talk about a lot of the shit that Alex talks about. And for those of you that listen to Call Her Daddy, like, you know what I'm talking about. She talks very graphically about sex, love, the hardships of it, relationships. I mean, everything in those three, in that holy trinity of relationships, she talks about, and she talks about in grave detail, which may piss off the 40-year-old Indian aunties that happen to want to listen to the podcast, happen to want to check out Call Her Daddy after they listen to this episode. Please don't. I'm praying. I'm giving you a disclaimer right now. This is something that your daughters wouldn't want you to listen to. And I wouldn't want you to either, because it could potentially be bad. But anyway, Alex Cooper is creating this counterculture where she's basically flipping the conversation on its head and saying, okay, fuck you. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, and I'm going to say it in all the details possible. And the ironic part is, now the old white men that were permitting these kind of types of podcasts and entertainment from really reaching the pinnacles that they are now after Alex Cooper for her money, because, she just got $20 million. It's pretty interesting to think about. But she is creating a counterculture. She's kind of flipping everything on its head, and she's saying, like, let's talk about these things, because there's a necessity to have these conversations. And based on the following that she's developed, it's clear that people want to have those conversations about sex and love and relationships. And we've gotten to the point where that is a possibility here in 2021, where I guess no topic is off limits. And that is a super interesting thing to think about. And also the fact that she's a woman and she's going to be one of the faces of Spotify's podcasting space is awesome as well. And another quick thing about Spotify is I find it really interesting that they're really dumping a lot of money. They dumped a lot of money into Joe Rogan and a lot of money into Alex, and they're really dumping a lot of money into the podcast space. And for me, I feel like this is them trying to make a move to acquire a lot of real estate in a space that isn't necessarily being realized by the rest of the world just yet. And I think they're not on the catch up, but they're trying to get ahead of it. And getting two of the biggest podcasters right now, two of the biggest content creators to Spotify exclusive deals is, I mean, what can I say? I think they're ahead of the game. And good on Alex. So congratulations, Alex. You completely deserve what you got. And speaking of Alex Cooper and our generation that we're in, my next pop culture topic is really something I've been thinking about a lot recently. It's kind of ironic I was mentioning Alex Cooper and Joe Rogan in the last topic, because those two are polar opposites, and I feel like they would have polar opposite perspectives on this particular issue. And is our generation an overcorrection? And here's what I mean, right? I feel like it's a cycle. I feel like it's cyclical. I feel like that's how society works. From what I've studied in history, from what I have observed, I feel like society is cyclical, in that we start out we go through periods of moderation and a gradual and steady change. And then we reach this kind of peak of the circle where it's just like boom, 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 right? Like you think about like this period of moderation between kind of the civil, I'm just giving this in the context of American history, of course, between the Civil War and World War II. Besides the wars, there wasn't really a lot of like social change, so to speak, right? There were little things like the women, like little spikes, but it was mostly a period of moderation. And then post-World War II, you hit the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, you start to see just massive amounts of change taking place within the United States. I mean, you look at like the hippies and like bra burners and anti-war activists and all of these different, and Black Panthers and all of these different things. Change was suddenly being demanded as you got past World War II. You had this long period of moderation and it peaked. And then kind of after all of the civil rights movement and the Voting Rights Act of 1968 was passed and all of these different things and the Vietnam War ended, you kind of saw another period of moderation that actually drifted more towards conservatism. If you look at the 80s and the 90s, I mean, you look at Reagan, who literally was the president throughout the 1980s, was one of the most conservative presidents in American history. And now you kind of are, there was a period of moderation, so to speak, through the 80s, through the early 2000s. And suddenly 2016 just invigorated this another peak. You know, you've come around, you've come all the way through the circle. And it's the same thing I was talking about with Alex Cooper. She's creating that counterculture, and the counterculture is thriving right now because we are at a point where everything is peaking. We are at a point where there's a lot of change going on, where there's a lot of demand for people saying, hey, this shit isn't right. And my point is, what I'm trying to argue here is that, yes, we've reached the peak of the circle. Are we overcorrecting at this point? And I'm talking not just in history and not just in terms of change. And I'm not trying to say that the protests and the conversations that we're having in regards to a lot of things are wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I'm trying to tell everybody or say to everybody is, listen, we are at the point where we're peaking. Like, are we getting too politically correct? Are we getting too, like, you know, this or that? And like, are we losing sight of what the actual motivations are? I mean, look at the Me Too movement, right? Like, that was spawned on by older people. I mean, you look at Alyssa Milano. Alyssa Milano was the kind of one of the OGs who started the Me Too movement. Of course, there are other ladies out there, and I don't want to like not mention them because they're important to the conversation. But Alyssa Milano was an actress, or is an actress who's in her 40s, I believe, who basically spawned this conversation to talk about sexual harassment within Hollywood. And then that expanded to other industries, so on and so forth. And then cancel culture spawned off Me Too because people started saying, hey, there are people doing other shit that's fucked up, so let's try and get it. And I'm not saying that there aren't people that deserve to be like quote unquote canceled. Of course, I don't really like the term because of the stigmatization around it, but I think there are people that deserve to just be like, fuck you. Like, what do you do? Right? Like, you don't deserve to have a platform because you say fucked up shit. I agree with that. But now that we've gotten through kind of all of these obvious people that have been quote unquote canceled, but I mean, has anybody really been canceled? That's a conversation for another day. But we've gotten through all these people. And now I feel like our generation is pulling at little strings. We're pulling at little things. We're like, Eminem was Slim Shady and he said all of these things. Let's try to cancel him. Oh, J. Cole wasn't woke enough in his last song. Let's cancel him. It's like, bro, what the fuck? Like, at this point, we're pulling at strings. We're not looking at, oh, shit, what is the motivation? Is this causing great harm to our society? We're looking at little fucking moments in time 15 years ago and judging a person's character based on that. That's where I say, okay, this is not necessarily, this could be an overcorrection. I think we're overcorrecting at this point rather than doing the right amount of change. And I feel like it comes with the mentality of Generation Z in particular, which is destroy everything. And I feel like that's kind of just our generation. We just like blindly swing with the blindfold and just boom, 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 which works because we're creating waves, right? We're creating change that's absolutely necessary. But at what point do we draw the line and say, okay, we need to like reassess our actions and come back and figure out what we need to do, what the next step is. And that's kind of how I feel about our generation. I think we are starting to overcorrect. It's going to be an interesting trend to see what this next generation below us does. Going to be really interesting. And that's all really I have to say about that. And speaking of overcorrections and political correctness and all of these different things in cancel culture, on to our news and politics topic, which is, will the real Kamala Harris please stand up? I love the Eminem pun, of course, had to do it to him. Here's what I want to say about this. In no way am I trying to hate on Kamala Harris in terms, well, I mean, I take that back. I am low-key hating on her. I have, since she started running for office way back in 2019 when she announced her presidential run for the 2020 election. I was not the biggest fan of Kamala Harris. I still am not the biggest fan of Kamala Harris, even though she's the vice president. And let me present to you a kind of thought that I have right now. I feel like people are in love with the idea of Kamala Harris. They love the fact that Kamala is half black, half South Asian, a strong, independent woman who supports the Democratic Party, which, let's be real, is the party that tends to be in mainstream media and supported by mainstream media. I think people love that idea of her. The fact that she's representing all of these different minority cultures, the fact that she's the first woman vice president ever, and these are all great things to want to establish. I also like the idea of Kamala Harris to an extent. Here's where I differ from everybody else. I don't think we really know who the real Kamala Harris is. She ran on a campaign back in 2019 and 2020, and obviously now she ran with Joe. She ran as this progressive candidate that was, as her motto said, for the people. When, ironically, according to several sources, when she was California's attorney general, which she was for a while, she was never really for the people. She really did a lot of messed up shit to incarcerated people, and also made a lot of calls that weren't necessarily productive, if that's the best word to say, to our society. And I have a couple quotes that I read from a New York Times article that I kind of want to mention right now. And this first quote is kind of about her criminal justice reform, something that I brought up for a little bit. So I'm going to read it right now. It says, time after time, when progressives urged her to embrace criminal justice reforms as a district attorney and then eventually the state's attorney general, California being the state, Miss Harris opposed them or stayed silent, wrote Laura Bazin. Most troubling, Miss Harris fought both tooth and nail to uphold wrongful convictions that had been secured through official misconduct that included evidence tampering, false testimony, and the suppression of crucial information by prosecutors on paying off crimes that her aides committed. Kamala Harris is your classic politician, according to this quote. I mean, she's paying off, people for her aides. She's more obsessed with her rep than actually helping the people, which is ironic because, again, her motto was for the people. That doesn't sound very for the people for me. And also another thing that I look at with politicians is the ability to change their mind, which is good. I want people to constantly be conversing and being like, oh, that's not right. I'm going to look into my stance on that and maybe change that, right? I feel like with Kamala Harris, there is a lot of flip-flopping, but it isn't necessarily for the right reasons. I mean, you can look at the death penalty. Her death penalty record is very, 50-50. It kind of goes for against. And she didn't really set a precedent in California when she was the state's attorney general for all of that stuff. And I feel like California is still in flux, and I feel like we'll always be in flux when it comes to the death penalty. It's a very interesting conversation if you think about it. But yeah, I mean, Kamala Harris has been very flip-floppy over the death penalty. And I mean, in terms of her character, I feel like she's just your classic politician. And I kind of have another quote that I want to talk about when it comes to that real quick before we move on to the last topic of the day. So here's the second quote. And this was written by someone who kind of knows her or knew her in a time in their lives and knew people that knew her as well, like her sorority. So I'm gonna read the quote. She's a daughter of two professors. She also went to Harvard and pledged, not Harvard. She also went to Howard and pledged Alpha Kappa Alpha. And I love them. I have many AKAs in my life who I love and adore dearly, but they are not typically the folks with their fists raised trying to beat down the system. They very much have a political ideology built on being twice as good and showing up in the crispest suit. What I have to say about this is very simple. I am not in no way trying to attack Kamala Harris's character. I don't know her as a person. Maybe she's cool. Maybe we love each other and hang out. She's from the Bay. I'm supposed to like her. Kamala Harris has everything that I like in a person. She's half Indian. She's like a minority. She's a woman. And she's from the Bay. I should, I want to like her. I want to. But here's the thing. I mean, quotes like this are literally just saying, she's your classic politician. She's out to win the game. She's not here to make change. She's not getting down and dirty and like wanting change and like, talking and having conversations about these things. She just wants to like stay back, make sure her hands don't get dirty. It's like House of Cards type shit where it's just like Kevin Spacey. I know he's canceled, but his character in the show is just like, I'm going to, do whatever it takes to play the political game. And I feel like Kamala Harris is that type of figurine. And I've always felt that way about her. And that's kind of where we're at with Kamala Harris. And that's kind of my thought about her. I'm interested to see what you guys have to say. I don't want to say two-faced, but she definitely does present a variety of sides to the people. And it's ironic, again, her campaign slogan was for the people, but yet she did really nothing she has done nothing for the people. She actually told a bunch of migrants in Honduras not to come, which is very reminiscent of what we had 4 years ago with the Republican president Donald Trump. So that's interesting. And I'm going to leave it at that. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Comment down below. Feel free to DM me, shit on me, whatever. And I hope you don't take my quotes out of context. So anyway, last topic of the day, our miscellaneous topic is Anuj and reading. Okay, here's what I'll say about this. When it comes to reading, I am not the best. I have not read a lot in my life. I used to read a lot in my life. Now I don't. And it's kind of been a habit that's fell by the wayside as time has gone on and as content has gone more on the internet. And, I can watch more YouTube and consume that sort of content now. That's where it's gone. Reading has kind of disappeared to the wayside. And it's something that I really, honestly, am pretty sad about. I've never really, wanted reading to go away. I've always wanted it to be there. I've always wanted it to be present in my life. Reading is something that I think we could all use. I think you could get transported to new worlds based on written word rather than letting your brain fry on the screen all the time. I think that is incredible. I think the fact that, it's got this old timey charm to it. That's crazy to think about that reading books is old school. Like reading paperback is so old school, and having a physical book in your hand, there's a whole separate feeling rather than an e-reader. Cause I've done both. I really love having physical books in my hand. But my point is I want to be accountable and I want to read more. And I've been thinking about it recently, and I kind of want to do something where like starting next week, maybe on Monday, before I go to bed, read like 10 pages of a novel. And I actually have a book waiting for me from pre-quarantine that was given to me by a professor that I really want to get into. I read like the first couple pages and then just completely stopped. But I also feel like I'm the type of kid that like, if I really love a book, I'll blitz right through it, right? Like no big deal. Like a day and a half, it'll be over. It's the only thing I'll obsess over for a day and a half. I won't watch TV. I won't, watch YouTube. I'll just read a book. But I feel like if I really hate a book, it's really hard for me to get through. It's like, right? That's kind of like what was the book in high school that I didn't really? Grapes of Wrath, for example, was very difficult to get through. I read the book. It was just, there were points of it where I didn't really like it, and I thought it was overtly descriptive for no reason, but, that's just me. I went back and, like, reread parts of it. I actually did like some of it. But anyway, I want to get better at reading. And so I posed a question to you all. Do you guys have any books I should read? Do you have any novels you recommend? Any genre, anything? I'm really open. And I'm going to start buying books from now on. So, because I hate spending money. And so I'll feel really shitty if I don't finish a book, at least finish it. So, or give it a shot. So that's my goal, is I'm just going to start buying books and making sure that I read them. And I tend to be someone who likes memoirs. So if you guys have any good memoirs in mind, please feel free to hit my DMs or text me or whatever it is that you feel comfortable with. And like that is the end of our show. I hope you guys enjoyed this 39 minutes. So right below 40, it'll go over 40 with, me finishing this. I hope you guys liked the show. If you guys liked it, feel free to leave a like down below. Feel free to subscribe, hit the subscribe button. Check out some of the other content. New podcast coming out soon. I promise. Just been in a rut with that recently, and I'm going to get that shit figured out soon, or rather than later. I hope you guys enjoyed the new studio for the Changavi Show. Hope to do this every week. And as always, you guys are amazing. I'm doing it at the back of my mom's office desk, so we're making do with what we have. But thank you guys so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Give me feedback on the show. What do you guys want to talk about? What do you guys want to hear? I'm here for all the conversations. So let's get into it. Hope you guys enjoyed this first episode of the Changavi Show. We'll be back for more, baby. Stay tuned. Peace.